Viewer discretion is advised. The Fort Worth Police Department, they are trying to come up with a way to get this racist piece of trash the less amount of time as they can get him. He's guilty, but they are going to try to find some type of loophole that police officers use to get from being fully convicted. I listened to the latest update of the chief, and I heard some words in there that I know that they're going to use as a way to say, well, the officer didn't know. But this piece of shit knew exactly what he was doing. And his intent was only to kill, to get a trophy. This type of behavior has been going on in Dallas, Fort Worth, that part of Texas for years. And slowly but surely, this stuff is getting exposed. But it's not happening fast enough because people are still dying and being killed by the different policing agencies throughout America. You know, they just fired their black police chief. But even when he was there was problems within the police force. That's why we don't trust police, period, because if you're black police officer, black chief, it doesn't make any difference. Black people, the civilians, we get treated like prisoners. The black people of this country, we get treated like we're some low-down, dirty, hardened criminals, even by black police officers. And we're not respected by the black police chiefs. They still look out for white police officers and try to protect them. They're going to be that line of defense for white police officers. And I'm sad that these black police officers don't know that they are being used. They say that there's diversity on the police force in Fort Worth. But who's running the police force? Not black people. I don't care if you're the chief. You can still be fired by the city manager. So what are you running? You know what? Not a damn thing.
We have a great many officers who work extremely hard every day. They do this at great sacrifice and with a servant's heart. I ask you to please do not let the actions of one officer reflect on the other 1,700.
That is one line I am tired of hearing. And we always hear that after some police officer has killed somebody, black. Don't let the action of this one officer reflect the actions of the thousands of men and women that are on the police force. We just haven't found out who's the other races. This fool just exposed himself. It's the culture of the police department. Because they are all throughout the police department. The captains, the chiefs, sergeants, on down to the foot soldiers. There are racists on the police force. And we're tired of you talking about how good the other ones are. We can't tell. How can I tell a good cop from a bad cop by looking? I won't be able to tell until, well, who wants to go there? Because no one wants to end up dead.
There's absolutely no excuse for this incident, and the person responsible will be held accountable. Ms. Jefferson's family and our community will have the last word. The courts will speak on her behalf. Each and every one of you have our support and our commitment to serve you better. We strive to be better every day. than we were the day before. My prayer for Tatiana's family, our community, and our department comes from Numbers chapter 6, verses 20.
Uh-oh, here he comes. He's going to put the Bible on us to make us be docile. Pray. Let God fight your battles. We're sorry.
4 and 26. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord's face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
The only way that black people on this planet will have peace is if white people would just drop dead. If tomorrow we waked up and all Caucasians were gone, I think we can have some peace on this planet. But because it just won't happen, no matter how we wish and pray, there ain't no peace. Jesus said he didn't come to bring peace, but a division, sir. Why don't you read that part of the scripture?
Take some questions.
Chief, the Jefferson family says that they want reform to what they see as a brutal police culture. Chief, what needs to change before police?
As the city manager alluded to yesterday, we're looking at bringing in an independent third-party group to come in and evaluate our policies, our practices, and our training to ensure that we are above best practice standards.
Put your hands up! Show me your hands!
How could any type of training have prevented that? Why don't black police officers, why don't they make those mistakes? Especially when they shoot white people. Why is it that it's always a white officer making this type of damn mistake? And why is it in Fort Worth, white officers love to beat up and now I guess shoot and kill black women? Because you've always had this problem. Don't act brand new.
There was a gun released, an image of a gun released. Do we know anything about the gun or the officer felt threatened by the gun that belonged to Ms. Jefferson?
I cannot tell you what he felt. He did not give a statement to our investigators. The gun was found just inside the room, but it makes sense that she would have a gun if she felt that she was being threatened or there was someone in the backyard.
They said she had a gun in her home. I wish to God she would have used it that night.
Chief, officers from what department exactly arrested Mr. Dean?
They were-
Was there any kind of incident in that?
They were Fort Worth officers, and I was not made aware that there was any type of struggle or anything like that.
As the other officer, has a new light shed on why, if they were responding to a welfare check, why did they park around the corner from the house? And also, why did they not ring the doorbell or knock on the door?
Yes. So they believe they were responding to an open structure call.
Now I know you heard that. An open structure call and not a welfare check that was originally called. This is the type of defense that these police officers are going to try to use as confusion. I didn't know. I thought it was this.
And not just a welfare check.
Chief, my question to that, because you said that yesterday, who determined, this neighbor called and said the door's open, obviously, who determined, okay, this is an open structure call versus a welfare check? Because as you said yesterday, those are two different types of responses by the officer. Who determined that?
So the information came from the neighbor to the call takers, and then while it was relayed to the dispatch, it was determined to be an open structure call.
So they are going to try and blame it on the dispatcher. That you took the wrong information. Instead of it being in a welfare check, now it's a call for an open structure. And it still doesn't make any difference Because even if it was an open structure, you saw the front door open. Why didn't you try to address yourself? He snuck around the house because he did not want to be detected. He didn't want anyone to know he was creeping around the house. And saw this lady in the window and immediately shot this lady down.
Dispatcher?
I don't know if I can't tell you specifically if it was a dispatcher, but that's something we're looking into.
Well, Chief, we heard the call from the neighbor and then dispatched to police
Correct.
officers, and it was a signal 56, I think it is. What is procedure for officers on an open structure? Is it to go onto the property and look at windows? It's an open structure. Do you think common sense would be to knock on a door?
Well, it depends on what the officers believed at the time.
It works in our favor sometimes, but it is not good to leave things up to the officers' discretion. There should be some guideline laws or things that an officer should do. In these particular situations, this is what you do. Don't lean to your own understanding.
If they think the structure is open due to somebody breaking in or something like that, that would elicit one response. If they
I am telling you that this is what the defense is going to use, that the officer didn't know. He thought this was an open structure call. He thought that someone was breaking into this structure. And he saw someone moving around inside, and he fired because he was in fear of his life. The chief is putting it out there. We haven't had the trial yet. People are listening to these interviews. So he's planting seeds in potential jurors' minds.
if they think it's just somebody left their door open, that would elicit a separate response.
Chief, in your memory, is this the fastest an officer has been prosecuted?
He has not been prosecuted yet. He has simply been arrested. There's still a long haul ahead of us. To my knowledge, yes.
What kind of toll has this taken on morale throughout the department? You've got officers who are still having to be out and responding to calls, and this has to take a toll. What actual steps being taken to deal with that?
So the morale,
Here comes the emotion and tears.
the morale piece is, I don't have any officer saying this action should not have been taken against this individual, this officer. I'm getting the complete opposite response. Chief, thank you for being quick and decisive. This is going to help heal us. The officers are hurting. I've been out there on patrol, and since this occurred, and it's the officers, they come up and hug, and it's very emotional because the officers, they try hard every day to try to make this city better. I likened it yesterday to some of our officers that are out there every weekend and most weeknights that they're out there trying to build these relationships, and I likened it to a bunch of ants building an ant hill, and then somebody comes with a hose and washes it away. They just have to start from scratch and build over. I think that's going to be all. Thank you.
It's quite simple. If you want us to heal, if you want to see us, the black people in this country, heal, start giving these cops life and death for the crimes that they commit against us. The previous police chief of Fort Worth that was fired, before he was fired, he reprimanded 2 of his black police officers for what he said was whistleblowing. A white officer arrested a lady and her 2 daughters, had them quite rough. And so someone leaked the video footage. The chief didn't like that. So he demoted the 2 captains, went on the 2 chiefs down to captains. But the officer that committed the crime, he only got a 10-day suspension. And after outcry, they increased it to 30 days. But this is why black people, we cannot get ahead, because when you have black officers on the force that are trying to bring justice for black people, And then you have a black police chief that wants to suppress this evidence, we will never get ahead. That's why, it's kind of difficult for a person that is really concerned about their community to be a police officer, because they will tie your hands and won't let you serve your community. It's all about politics.
Keys and Pridgeon are accused of leaking body cam video critical to the investigation into the controversial arrest of Jacqueline Craig and her two daughters. The arresting officer is William Martin. It was his body cam video and parts of his personnel file that were leaked. Charges against Craig and her daughters were dropped. Martin got a 10-day suspension and is still working for the department. The chief recommended a 3-day suspension for Keys to the Civil Service Commission. In his letter, Chief Fitzgerald says Keys was not candid and forthcoming under questioning, and that phone records revealed he initiated at least 4 text message conversations with Pridgeon about Officer Martin. In one exchange, Keys starts a text conversation with Pridgeon about Martin and race, including sending a video titled Colored People's Justice. Keys denied being deceptive during the investigation.
These are serious matters, we know, and I can tell you that it's been a difficult decision again regarding 2 men that I trusted, I call colleagues, and I call friends. We know that those files were downloaded on January 18th, 2017 to an external storage device plugged into Chief Pridgeon's computer. We have video and security evidence that he and Keys were in Pridgeon's office at the time. We are certain that only one person, Abdul Pridgeon, downloaded the confidential information from a restricted internet site, and digital evidence proves that the exact same set of files were uploaded to a public website.
Yeah, I question the chief's judgment, and I question the chief's judgment in public and in private. I don't care your title, your position, you don't get to impugn my character in the media and not respect the response from me. I'm not some backdoor dealing, double talking, sidestepping political puppet. I am a career public servant. That's right. Chief Fitzgerald is more concerned with political capital and upward mobility than with the welfare of the community. Right. I must respect his official position, but I no longer respect his judgment.
Keys was surrounded by ministers who called for the chief to be fired. Lee Merritt was there too. He represents Jacqueline Craig and is described in the chief's letter as the person who received the leaked files. Heather, the mayor says after watching that body cam video, she is really appalled and heartbroken over Officer William Martin's behavior. She says she stands by the police chief, but as far as that 10-day suspension for the officer, she thinks it should have been harsher. Mayor Betsy Price and Chief Joel Fitzgerald stood together again to speak on the Rock Garden arrest. But this time, the mayor had a very different tone. Today, we found out that Thursday was the first time she saw the leaked body cam video of Officer William Martin taking down and arresting Jacqueline Craig and her two daughters.
We do not tolerate discrimination, bullying, or intimidation in Fort Worth. All of these were evidenced in Officer Martin's behavior.
The charges against Craig and her adult daughter were dropped on Thursday.
I've had time to really reflect upon this. I had tremendous community input. I can't say that I made the best initial decision.
He knows that he made a poor decision. The way that cop handled that woman, all he received was a 10-day suspension. But the cops who you say leaked out the body cam footage, they lose their chief's pension, because they were chiefs and you got them knocked all the way down to captains. You're trying to get one knocked all the way down to sergeant. And I'm glad you got fired.
The chief suspended Officer Martin for 10 days. He's done the discipline and is back at work on desk duty.
I don't say that I necessarily agree with the discipline of Officer Martin, but I will say that discipline was Chief Fitzgerald's decision alone.
Did you see how that coon dropped his head and tried to look off when the chief put his ass out there? And that happens time and time again to black officers that go along with the abuse of their own people. In the end, it is you that gets bitten on the ass.
But I will say that discipline was Chief Fitzgerald's decision alone.
Is that Sergeant Pierce will receive a 35-day suspension for failure to supervise. The allegations of unlawful arrest and use of force are not sustained, and he will also pull his appeals on the bypass for the promotion to lieutenant.
What do you make of this situation? Do you think that he was unfairly terminated? Do you think that there was excessive, unnecessary harm done to him?
I am happy with the results. That's really all that I can say. We've got an agreement that we're going to keep comments to a minimum, but I think that the right thing was done.
What can you say about this process, the deal that was made, say pursuant to this hearing?
It was a sham.
I feel as if this trial with Chandler Jefferson is going to be a sham as well. These cops always come out talking about what they're going to do. They have the mayor come out talking about the neighborhood and the town healing. And they say this after every killing. But nothing has changed. Things remain the same. Why? Because you have the same people in power that was in power during the time that these atrocities happened. So as long as they are in power, as long as they have people they have trained up under them to take over when they relinquish their power, what's going to change? Nothing is going to change.
I'm going to tell you that under normal circumstances, everyone is kind of looped in. As you guys saw the last time we went through this situation with Jacqueline Craig, she was called upon because she was going to need to testify. No one ever talked to myself or Dorsey, ever. So they knew that they were going to backtrack and do this anyway. This was all done hush-hush. I learned the majority of what I learned from the media, to be perfectly honest. That doesn't make any sense. And the thing is, I refused to publicly comment on it because I knew that you had sources, but no one had directly reached out. So we came today to find out what exactly is going to go on. Is the media correct? The media knew before this young lady who was subjected to this kind of treatment knew.
There comes a point in time when I, as city manager, have to examine the totality of a situation and then decide a course of action. My responsibility is to make decisions and recommendations in the best interest of the city of Fort Worth. In determining what is best for the city of Fort Worth and the Fort Worth Police Department, I have decided to remove Chief Fitzgerald as police chief effective today. Let me go ahead and address several issues and questions. I'm sure one of the questions is this action today based on the recent incident in Washington, D.C.? As an isolated incident, no. As a culmination of items, yes. There are certainly several versions of what happened in Washington, D.C. and the extent of how heated the incident or confrontation was or wasn't. Nonetheless, there was an incident, and it brings again into question judgment and leadership. The incident required that the chief, Assistant City Manager Jay Chop, and I review what happened and discuss how it impacted and how it impacts the police department and the city. It has been documented in the media that I as city manager and Jay Chop as assistant city manager, have been working with the chief on some issues. More specifically, since the fall when Chief Fitzgerald was announced as the mayor of Baltimore's selection as police chief. Questions of commitment and leadership both inside the department and in the community had been raised. Further, I have complete confidence in the men and women in our police department and their continued service to our citizens. I have complete confidence in the management team of the police department and their ability to lead the organization during this change. I have appointed Ed Krause as interim police chief, and we have complete confidence in his leadership ability.
The neighbor that made the call. The people in Dallas, I think y'all better get this guy some protection. Because why did they release the body cam footage so fast? This man is a witness. He saw everything. He made the initial call, and he saw the cops when they went to the lady house, and he heard the shots. He is a witness. And you know what happened to Joshua Brown and all of the other witnesses in other cases involving the citizens versus the police department. They already made some claim that Miss Jefferson's house was one of the nicer homes in the neighborhood, and on the cool they trying to say that it's a dilapidated area so they can say that, oh, it was a high crime area and somebody came by and did a drive-by shooting at this man's house. Although I just can't help but keep saying is that we as black people, we have to remember that we're having a rough time here in this country, and calling the police is really a death sentence for somebody. It just happens too much. And somewhere along the line, we just have to kind of like get up out the bed, get out of our comfort zone, and do the neighborly things. See, because people are scared for their own lives. And I'm assuming that is the reason why he didn't want to go over there to the house and check himself, because he was in fear of his own safety. But sometimes, as a man, you got to take fear out of it. I heard this guy said this thing a long time ago. He said that you can tell when a man is getting old. His nuts draw up. He loses nerve. Don't let your nuts draw up. You have nothing to fear but fear itself. And fear and cowardice is not an attribute of believers. If you call yourself any kind of believer and you're scared and cowardly, that's because you have no faith. From this day forward, when things like this happen to us, we need to stay on it. We don't need to get to the point to where we get relaxed and just go home and go back to our lives. We need to keep the pressure on. Stay in the media. Keep it alive. Because if you let it die, sooner or later, one of you may end up dead.